Well, I'm just taking a moment to imagine your mom walking out to the barn and like tantalizing the old ranch hands and being like, I had a beautiful voice once, but then a man came and told me that I was special.
It's just so
No,
hot out here.
it's just so hot out here. Look at my feet.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, Daisy Mabel Griswold.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit us at shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, Lovecraft Country, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and other special events. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, this week we will be reviewing a movie that traditionally in the summertime right now in August is where people hit the road. They go out and see a new place. They go see family. They take a vacation. And one of our listeners, Tom from Crane, Texas, he really wanted us to review a movie that meant a lot to him. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it right now. So the Shat community stepped up and they crowdfunded this commission for him. And so, Tom, this commission is for you, and you wanted us to review the 1983 American road comedy film classic, National Lampoon's Vacation. So take it away, Tom.
Tom, Crane, Texas. Howdy, Shat Crew. I want to send out a big shout out and many thanks to all the listeners who donated funds to get Vacation crowdfunded. I also want to thank the Shat Crew for specially reviewing the movie Vacation. As you all know, I watched Vacation for the first time in 1995 with many loved ones in my family. And many of those loved ones are now departed. When we all watch movies together, we would discuss those movies with thoughts, opinions, or questions we have about the movie after the movie. So to continue that tradition, I would like to ask 3 questions I would love to hear all of your opinions and thoughts on about Vacation. Question 1 was for the cinematography on Vacation. Do you know if it was filmed all on location, all on movie sets, or a mixture of both? I think the cinematography was shot really beautifully for Vacation. Question 2. Do you think Clark would have cheated on his wife and gone all the way with the woman he was skinny dipping with in the pool? I would like to think he would have came to his senses and not cheated on her. Question 3. What kind of vehicle do you think the family truckster wagon was supposed to be? I know it was not a Chevy, Buick, Oldsmobile, or Pontiac wagon. And I also heard Big D say on the Student Bodies podcast that he would like the listeners to start saying when they last viewed the movie that was being reviewed. I last saw Vacation in June of 2021. I hope you all have a great week, and thank you all very much.
Well, thanks, Tom, for picking this movie, and thanks everyone who chipped in for it. I do know a couple of the answers to the questions. I know for a fact that the Arizona parts were filmed in Arizona because that is clearly Sedona for sure. And I don't think there's any way they could have replicated that set in '83. It's not like now with the Marvel movies where they just fill in the background later. Like that was definitely shot on set. And I know the family truckster was a Ford.
No, I think they intentionally left it vague to kind of just apply to all the different family vehicles, because before we had the minivan, now the station wagon was the most uncool vehicle a family could have. You get the wood paneling, you get every possible accessory. I think that's what they're trying to do. But I want to answer number 2. Would Clark have cheated? The only thing he didn't do was penetrate her. He was naked in the pool. He did everything but touch genitals. He crossed that line.
But he's also the guy that's like not going to be able to bang. You know what I mean?
He's
like
not
he won't be
gonna
able to get it up.
Yeah.
That would be the gag. And we'll get to that soon enough, Tom from Crane, Texas. Don't worry.
Well, National Lampoon's Vacation is a 1983 American road comedy film directed by Harold Ramis and starring Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Imogene Coca, Randy Quaid, John Candy, and Christy Brinkley in her acting debut. The screenplay was written by John Hughes based on his short story Vacation 58, which appeared in National Lampoon. That was a magazine, guys. The film was a box office hit, earning more than $60 million in the U.S. with an estimated budget of $15 million and received positive reviews from critics. As a result of its success, 4 sequels have been produced. European Vacation in 1985, Christmas Vacation in 1989, Vegas Vacation in 1997, and Vacation in 2015. In 2000, readers of Total Film voted Vacation the 46th greatest comedy film of all time. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the movie we're reviewing. Ash, we'll start with you. What are your memories of National Lampoon's Vacation?
So my dad really loved the vacation movies growing up, like all of them. And I don't really have a lot of memories of them except for Christmas Vacation. And that's probably because that was his favorite. He loves Christmas movies and he really enjoyed the Christmas Vacation film. But this one would probably be the only other one that I have any memory of in terms of watching it with him. And I have to be honest that even like when I was a kid or like a teenager, I never really got them. I've never been a big fan of Chevy Chase. And so Clark, which I think like this movie, how last week on Of Mice and Men, we were talking about how it hung on John Malkovich. This movie totally hangs in whether or not you like Chevy Chase and whether or not you like Clark as a character. And maybe it's just because I had such an awesome dad, but like I would have never wanted a dad like this. But I adore road trips. They're one of my favorite things to do. And so I was excited to go back and rewatch it and see like as an adult if this was something that I would enjoy more this time around.
So for me, growing up, my family didn't have that much money. I mean, we weren't struggling, but a big vacation to like Disney was never in the cards. You just couldn't do it. Our vacation was getting in the Volvo and driving upstate to the cabin that my grandparents had built. But luckily, my mother had her best friend from Sweden who was in the travel industry. She used to work. You couldn't just book an airline ticket yourself. You had to call a travel agent. So she was a travel agent. She somehow got 2 tickets down to Florida. So she took me at 8 years old to Florida, took me to Disney. I can vividly remember the feelings of it, the excitement of it. We went to Disney and we went to Gatorland. Ironically now, I live less than half a mile from where Gatorland is. I drive by Gatorland when I would pick up Emma from school every day. And I remember that trip like it was yesterday. Now, ironically, this was also the trip where I saw my first naked woman, because I accidentally walked in on her in the shower, and it was a memorable day and a memorable trip on multiple fronts.
How did you accidentally walk in on someone in the shower?
I was a stupid kid. I don't. She was talking to me, so I thought maybe she was outside of it. But I walked in, and I remember being shocked, and I was like, should I tell my mother? Is this weird? This was such a magical thing. Why do I like them so much? I can remember just the shower water running. It's a very erotic moment for an 8-year-old boy.
I like the word breasts never came up in this conversation, but you referred to them as them.
Yeah.
You know, those things.
Yes, those magical things.
Well, growing up, I never understood why my friends enjoyed this movie or series. I remember distinctly going on road trips with my friends, like my friend Ryan Swank, and his dad, they had like the portable DVD player, and they would put this DVD on in the car while we're on a road trip, as opposed to just enjoying the road trip itself. And just whatever patriarchal, dim-witted world produced this movie as its peak of comedy. And I know a lot of you out there who wrote in about Red Dawn, who called in to tell us we don't know the zeitgeist of the time or whatever, are gonna slam me for this. But I am sorry, I don't like the world that thinks this is really funny. So without further ado, Big D, let's go.
When you think vacation, think National Lampoon's Vacation. See the real America.
Hey, underpants. Hey, yellow.
It's friendly.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Don't you want to look at the Grand Canyon?
It's educational.
Great.
And most of all, it's fun.
The dog went on the picnic basket.
Like Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo,
Clark.
Imogene Coca, Randy Quaid, John Candy, and Christy Brinkley.
Well, are you gonna go for it?
This is crazy. This is crazy. This is crazy.
Take you for a ride. This summer, when you think vacation, think National Lampoon's Vacation.
Better check under the hood.
Clark Griswold decides to lead his family on a cross-country expedition from the Chicago suburbs to the Southern California amusement park, Walley World. When the new car he orders doesn't arrive, Clark is forced to buy the Wagon Queen family truckster, an oversized station wagon. The family is tagged by vandals in East St. Louis, Illinois. Clark aggravates a bartender in Dodge City, Kansas, and he is tantalized on numerous occasions by a beautiful young woman driving a flashy red Ferrari 308 GTS.
So as the resident old man on the podcast, and I'm not going to pretend to think that our audience is anywhere near our ages. I think they're probably a little bit younger and they like the nostalgia of the 80s and 90s films. So I'm going to take you way back and give you a little lesson about vacation in the 80s. Back then, before GPS, before Google, you literally had to take out an atlas and either map it yourself, or you could go to the AAA, the American Automobile Association of America, and they would print you out a how-to turn-by-turn direction of your route. If you were going from Chicago to California, it would be 30 pages. Now, you can imagine your family in a car trying to navigate by turn. You miss one, you're screwed. It inevitably ended up in a family argument. This was so real and so true to a kid of the 80s. But I also want to give now one quick tip to anyone out there doing some Shat traveling.
First dad moment of the pod.
The AAA also says if you get a rental car or a car you're not familiar with, if you look at the gas gauge, you'll notice the little symbol for the gas. There's also a little triangle or arrow on either side. That is indicating which side of the car has the gas cap on it.
What if the gas cap's in the back behind the license plate?
I don't think that's gonna happen. So you'll be good. So
What if it's an electric vehicle?
I will bet you the arrow points to which side the port's on.
Well, my favorite thing about road trips as a kid was the navigating, right? And I remember when I was finally old enough to be the navigator for my dad. And so my mom would get in the back of the car and lay down and go to sleep with my brother. And I got to see...
Was it a hearse?
No, it was a van, but there were two seats. But I got to see so much of the country because I would force myself to stay awake with my dad and he would drive the night shift and we would figure out shortcuts and all of that. And there was this one time we wound up in a cow pasture in Colorado and my mom is very neurotic. And so she was just panicked that we were going to die. But we got ourselves back to the road and we saved about 45 minutes with this shortcut. And it's still an absolute highlight of my childhood, being in this field, literally surrounded by cows in an unknown state. We passed a mailbox that my dad's like, that's a marker. And my dad was just cracking up laughing because he's like the most laid back guy in the world. And my mom was actually in tears praying in the back seat for us not to be murdered. And it was just incredible. And unfortunately would never happen today, thanks to Waze.
Well, I still get to live the joys of old-timey road trips thanks to motorcycles because I'm too fucking paranoid to put my phone on one of those like handlebar phone holders. Because if you think about it, you wreck and that phone's going to go flying like 100 yards, right? So now you can't call an ambulance. I'm just going to be laying there with my mangled body, hoping that my Bluetooth from my helmet connects to my phone that's over in the river somewhere. And with that Bluetooth in my helmet, I get turn-by-turn directions, but it's usually too loud to hear. And then I've got an Apple Watch, which is supposed to give me directions on my wrist, but that's generally inside my glove or sleeve. So still in 2021, I print out my directions and then I put them inside my tank bag that's laminated. And I just have to look down at those printed directions. And like you said, Big D, if I miss a turn, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that this made me really nostalgic for is like singing on road trips. I don't know about you guys and like what your take is on this, but I am sorry to say that the opening of this with like Clark and his wife singing these songs is completely my family because my mom, she's an absolutely amazing voice. Like she used to travel all over the world singing. She has a really beautiful singing voice. And my brother has an absolutely beautiful voice. And I have a decent one. I'm not nearly as talented as them, but I can certainly sing. So we do like these 3-part harmonies in the car and we'll, play like Les Mis and we'll take like particular parts. And I remember the first time Tom went anywhere with us, because if you know me, I am highly cynical. Like I am not big on group anything, and he saw me like join in like this chorus, and the look he gave me was just so ridiculous because I felt like the family in that scene of Step Brothers when they're all singing, "Oh Sweet Child of Mine" in the car together, because that's kind of my family. And now he insists on taking his own car if the three of us are going to be together. But what about y'all? Like, are y'all singers in the car?
Listen, if Spotify, if the actual fucking song is on, yes, let's all sing along. I'm down. I thought you meant like a cappella because without music, hell to the no.
No, we got tracks. We definitely got some tracks.
Oh, yeah, I'm down.
No, I picture you like Andy from The Office. Do you guys have to warm up and harmonize?
My mom often warms up. My mom is that annoying person that like my kids will sing Old MacDonald's on a Farm, and like when it's the end, like the E-I-E-I-O, like she harmonizes that part. Like she harmonizes in the ABC. She's insufferable about that kind of thing.
Let me just get this right. So even with music on, if you guys are singing, Tom is going to get in another car and just drive alongside you?
Oh yeah, no, he can't stand it. He hates group singing.
What about like headphones or something?
No, I mean like he just can't even like be around it because it's so unlike me. And he feels like I'm like an imposter. Like even at concerts, he doesn't sing. Like he just sits very quietly and observes. And he did shed a single tear at a Sigur Rós concert once, but like that's about as much interaction he's going to get with like the show. Obviously, the other like really iconic part of this film that everybody remembers is the absolutely flawlessly beautiful Christy Brinkley riding up in that red little sports car. I also could kind of relate to this part. I mean, I've never had like a super hot blonde follow us and us randomly stop at the same random roadside motel together, but I have been on really, really long road trips, and like, how like all of a sudden you'll realize you're traveling for extended periods with like the same cars alongside you. And there's something really comforting to it. And when they exit, it gets kind of, sad after a while. And on this one trip, my brother and I went to Disney World because my family would go to Disney once or twice a year growing up. And so we just randomly drove down, and this car was next to us for like 6 hours. And we wound up pulling off in Tallahassee and like partying with like this group of guys for like 4 or 5 hours that night. It was super fun. Again, only the type of thing that's going to happen on a road trip. So I appreciate it. I mean, I didn't like the whole cheating thing, but I appreciated that part of it because road trips can be random like that.
Dude, I'm just laughing about the differences. I can picture our family trips. You're harmonizing. You have like set routines. Oh, yeah. And I got my fucking dad with a CB radio trying to pretend to be a trucker to find out like reports about cops up ahead. And we were listening to Kenny Rogers and like mysteries from like the 20s on tape. Very different road trip.
That sounds really cool. I mean, the Kenny Rogers, maybe not so much, with the mysteries from the 20s. Sounds pretty badass.
Yeah, we just had Persian music, CDs, and pistachios.
I love it.
But movies like this had me convinced that like road trips were going to end in my death. I was convinced that if we went through a neighborhood where we didn't belong, like a bunch of black guys are going to come steal my car and kill me. And that lasted until like I actually ventured out as an adult on my own. The truth is that most people in neighborhoods like East St. Louis, Illinois, they just want to go to work and live their lives. And they don't want the fucking shit hubcaps off your ugly ass car. And even if they did want to steal from you, why wouldn't they just take your luggage? So scenes like this, I just think are so dangerous for a movie that's intended for a whole family, as I'm assuming Vacation was. And we think about it as this like wholesome family movie, when in fact it's just like reinforcing these really shitty racial stereotypes.
Granted, Harold Ramis, he hated the scene. Shortly after the film was finished, he regretted it. He didn't want to put it in. He said he wouldn't do it today. But I have a different take on it, because I think the scene reflects worse on the Griswolds. The black guys, they are fucking with the Griswolds because the Griswolds are just ignorant and they know it. The black guys, they're smarter. They're completely aware. They're having fun at the Griswolds' expense, and I don't blame them. They're taking the money, pretending to be dumb. It's all a game. But the Griswolds, they mock everyone that's different. Okay, it's not just in East St. Louis. And I think that their portrayal of low-income rural America is far worse. They're saying that, Cousin Eddie, they're too dumb to even understand how backwards and worthless their lives are. So I don't think this scene in St. Louis is as bad as it's made out to be. Looks bad, but the Griswolds are the ones who look like clowns.
Last week we were talking about how like the 90s were a time when if you wanted an Oscar, you played someone that was intellectually disabled. The 80s were a time where you were just afraid of the inner city, because this made me feel like you could cut this with the scenes from Adventures in Babysitting where she's terrified of the bus, the bus station, where she's like, oh no, that woman's putting on socks. Like, and then she freaks out and cries. Like that's exactly what this reminded me of. And it's just ridiculous. And sure, write in and be like, you didn't get what it was like at this time. And you're right, because I was born this year. But I'm pretty glad that the world has changed since then, because it was ridiculous.
2020 or 1980, I don't think that black neighborhoods just hung out like jackals waiting for your car to pull up and then come after you. And in defense of Adventures in Babysitting, I'd like to point out that in that case, it's like Big D was saying, is they were showing that the kids were ridiculous, that nobody was actually trying to hurt them. The other thing this movie brought up for me, though, is restaurants where people are like super nice or super mean, because I don't need my server to be nice to me. And I think in an era where we're like hell bent on customer service being a differentiator between businesses, that like they keep trying to up the level of how nice people are to you. And I think like Dutch Bros, I don't know if you guys have that out where you live, but Dutch Bros Coffee, right? Their whole shtick is that they have really good coffee and they're super nice to you. Hey, how's it going? Got any plans today? Oh, you're looking good. I don't want that. I actually avoid them because the baristas make me want to murder. But similarly, I'm very uncomfortable in restaurants where the servers and I are expected to be mean to one another. Like, it's the worst restaurant shtick I've ever experienced. Like Ed DeBevick's. I went to Wiener Circle once in Chicago, which is supposed to be like a ton of fun, and we're all drunk. And I liked being a spectator when the servers were just like calling people fat bitches and stuff. But I hated it when it was my turn to order, because I'm like, I don't want to be mean to you. I just want my hot dog.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever been in a restaurant where people are intentionally mean. I've been in restaurants where they throw like bread at you, but it's because you want it, because bread's delicious.
Is that a genre of restaurant? Because I would do that. Yes, throw bread at me.
It's like a big thing in the South. There's a bunch of restaurants where like you just like lift up your hand and then like a roll hits it and you're like, yeah, because we like carbs here. But I have to relate with you about like the overtly friendly. Like, I appreciate, and please know, all of you out there that are servers, you have the hardest job in the world. And so I believe that I should always be polite to you because you have a really difficult job. But my pet peeve is that waiter that's like constantly interrupting to ask if you need anything else. I would prefer to just be left alone as long as my food comes out right, my drinks are refilled, and please avoid making eye contact with me. Then I will leave you a massive tip. Like, I don't need all of that like buttering up and like, oh, what are you guys here for? Are you celebrating something? Let's all come around and sing happy birthday and put a sombrero on your head. Like, I mean, it's That's my worst fucking nightmare.
Sir, this is an Olive Garden.
Or a Ponchos.
I worked at Olive Garden, okay? I worked at Olive Garden. I'll speak from experience here. I lasted a couple months until I choked out that guy in front of the general manager. But listen, you don't say, oh, it's the hardest job. It's just not. If you're a dick to them, they're going to fuck with your food. So don't. Be nice. Come on. These people aren't happy to be there. They don't want to sing happy birthday or some bullshit song or wear tchotchkes. Feel pity on them. Tip them 25%.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the family stops in Kansas to visit Ellen's cousin Catherine and her husband Eddie, who foist cranky Aunt Edna and her mean dog Dinky on the Griswolds. At a decrepit campground in Colorado, Clark forgets to untie Dinky's leash from the bumper before driving off the next morning, killing the dog. A motorcycle cop pulls the Griswolds over for animal cruelty, while Edna learns of her dog's death and becomes more irate with Clark. Clark's wife, Ellen, loses her credit cards, forcing Clark to cash a check for future spending.
So I have to say that Clark, I think, is making, by this point in the movie, the ultimate road trip mistake, which is overbooking your itinerary while driving. If he's going out to Walley World, then go out to Walley World. Like, make a couple of stops along the way. See the world's largest ball of twine. Yeah. That's interesting. But you don't have to make so many stops like seeing family or doing like full day excursions places. Because I think you wind up just like wearing everybody out. I think you have to hit like this perfect balance. And he completely ignores that. And if this were my family, we would have all hated each other so much by the time we got to the overcrowded theme park where just innately we're going to hate one another that it would have ruined like the whole vacation.
So I'm guilty of this.
Oh, yes, you are. You're guilty of this in life. You overplan your days.
Yeah. And actually, if you go to like Google Maps, I have lists for every city that I make so that even if you're not with me, I can plan out your day for you.
God.
New Orleans, if I'm there for 2 days, it is a whirlwind nightmare of dancing, drinking, and eating.
So wonderful.
Sarah and I were in Las Vegas for 20 hours last weekend, and I planned in this one day, that's including sleep, by the way, a trip to Mandalay Bay Beach, a soccer match, drinks at the Peppermill, food at Tacos El Gordo, and then a 3 a.m. secret pizza. We also stopped by Footlong Hot Dog. We walked the entire strip, played video poker, and had 3 rounds in the sack. And I still felt like we didn't do enough because we didn't make it to the Fremont Street experience this time around. So we had to do it next time. And I was like heartbroken the whole drive back. I'm like, I should have planned better.
No. And 2, I think that it's a little bit different when you're in one spot, right? Like I am guilty of over planning being in a city, but it's a little different like when you've got like kids and you know you've got to get from point A to point B by the end of the week to hit this theme park because you've got like hotel reservations. I don't know. I'm just still amazed by the Footlong hot dog things. They're amazing in Vegas.
Yeah, $2.49. In this day and age, what a bargain. And they don't even have to be nice to you.
Mm-hmm.
Ash, you mentioned earlier Christmas Vacation and Cousin Eddie. And I think most people quote Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation. Like we often just imagine him in that robe, in that, winter cap. But our first introduction to Cousin Eddie is so much better in this movie. You can almost see where the audience feedback caused the series to ham up Randy Quaid's character for the sequel. Like in this one, he's genuinely funny. The character's enjoyable. And I can see them just getting a focus group and being like, okay, what was funny about Cousin Eddie? Taking notes and then just punching that up to 11. This is easily my favorite part of the movie when they're visiting Catherine and Eddie's house.
So we've complained multiple times about Chevy Chase's love for over-the-top physical humor, where he falls down, he'll throw things. It's so tiring, like him getting tangled up in the hose or throwing the license plate. There are some subtle moments in this part of the movie that are brilliant, that I only caught upon this watch. When they're saying goodbye to the family and they're all kind of hugging, in the background, you see that Ellen has to fight off Cousin Eddie because he's getting handsy with her. And it's not even at the front. It's a little subtle moment that I really, really love. He's trying to just avoid like having him grope her. And this movie has so many of the memorable moments. I think when people remember this movie, because it is a vignette of all these different stops, all these different events, this has the densest packing of memorable moments in this entire movie. We get the lines, everybody French kisses, yeah, but daddy says I'm the best. We get Vicky stirring the Kool-Aid with her hand. I don't know why they call it Hamburger Helper. It does fine by itself. And then we get King B trying to borrow $52,000 from Gene. This is the best part of the movie.
In his defense, he has paid me back. The funny thing about King B paying you back, though, is that he'll pay you back and you'll say, are you sure you could pay me back this much at once? And then he'll remind you that, yeah, because if I need to borrow it again, I just will. Yeah, he is my cousin Eddie, and I love him for it.
He totally is.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I had forgotten how much Eddie's family changes between this and Christmas Vacation. Because, like, I obviously remember the famous recasting of, like, Anthony Michael Hall with Johnny Galecki and Juliette Lewis instead of the other girl. You know, I remember that part. But, you know, cousin Eddie's family, I didn't realize the entire ages of his kids completely change. And also how random that Jane Krakowski is in this, that she plays his weed smoking daughter. I mean, that was incredibly random, but also really amazing.
As a kid, you're viewing this movie from the back seat. What it's like to be a member trapped in that car. Now I'm watching it as the guy in the front seat, as the father, the husband. And I got to tell you, Beverly D'Angelo, she is super hot and super sexy.
Mm-hmm.
Her breasts are natural. They're beautiful. That shower scene reminded me like of the time when I was an 8-year-old boy. She's seductive. She is a mature woman who is in her sexual prime, and she still embraces it. She's down to get freaky. She'll momentarily think about blowing Clark, even though the kids are in the back seat. She's willing to have sex in a dirty, smelly tent, in a sleeping bag, or on the floor of a dirty motel, but yet she still loves Clark. Why? Clark's an idiot. She tolerates him. She even backs up his dumb ideas. I don't know why. When they jump the car, she snaps into super mom mode. She's the only functioning adult there. She puts Ed in her place. Get back in the car and shut up. She tells Rusty and Audrey, hey, go police up the clothes. She is the coolest wife. She's amazing. She's sexy. She's hot, capable. I really love her in this movie.
I think this is one of the things that ages this movie the most, because this empowered of like a female character or like mom would like never happen in 2021. Like you wouldn't be able to get away with the husband being like he is and her being so empowered and awesome. She'd just leave him, right? Because it's a completely unbalanced relationship, because Clark is this bumbling weirdo. He's not hot. He's clearly cheating on her left and right, and she would walk away. Ellen would never stay with him, and this day and age, they'd be split. So,
and Big D, I totally agree on that hotness. You said breasts. I thought you were going to say bangs. She's got amazing bangs. But I always thought of these National Lampoon movies from the 80s and 90s being kind of wholesome family fun. I forgot that there was this much adult stuff going on. There are multiple scenes in this movie with just surprise boobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just don't expect them. She's putting her shirt on. It's like, oh, by the way, here's a tit. There's references to bopping your bologna and like lines like fuck yo mama. And you know, Clark basically assessing the situation saying, I think you're all fucked in the head. I actually respect National Lampoon's Vacation much more than I ever did when I was younger. I forgot that it was that they were pushing the envelope this much in a mainstream film. I mean, this is a mainstream part of Americana, but it's doing some really edgy shit for 1983.
Yeah, I think in our memories, we all think this was PG. This was a family fun movie. This is R. And upon this viewing, I also picked up on another subtle little joke. When Rusty and Clark are sharing a beer after he jumps the 50 yards and they're sitting there talking, he says, oh, well, you're a man now, Rusty. He says, well, you know, I've only been a man a few days, Dad. I get it now. He was actually jerking off with Cousin Dale. Cousin Dale didn't just show him the nudie books. He showed him how to use it.
And I'm not sure exactly what the timelines are, but I was reading that there were some other versions of the movie where like the porno mags were cut out or the weed was cut out and stuff. So I'm really glad that in the definitive version that they show on streaming services, all that stuff's back in because it makes it a better movie.
Yeah, and we didn't need to watch him teach him how to bop his bologna.
I wouldn't mind. While Ellen and Clark argue during a drive between Utah and Arizona, they crash and become stranded in the desert. After setting off alone in the desert to look for help, Clark eventually reunites with his family, who have been rescued and taken to a local mechanic. The mechanic extorts Clark's remaining cash, only to render the car barely operational. When Clark is unable to convince a hotel clerk to cash a personal check because his credit card was reported stolen, he raids the cash register behind the clerk's back and leaves the check.
So this is like your first like huge warning flag about Clark, because he's a completely shitty dad and husband. Like your kids and your wife are alone in the desert and you leave on a search mission without any water in the desert that you know you're not going to be successful on because it's the fucking desert. And I don't know if y'all noticed this, but like this is exactly the plot of The Hills Have Eyes. Like identical. The only thing that happens is Clark reunites with his family as opposed to, you know, people that have been mutated due to nuclear experiments, not attacking them and killing them. But it's the exact plot. And for me, that is a far superior film to this one.
Yeah, they're basically the same movie, Ash.
But I think I'm going to shift back into old man mode here and
Oh my God.
try to be informative on Shat the movies.
Please announce it correctly. This is dad moment number 2.
This is dad moment number 2 as I shift back into facts and how to save your life portion of Shat the movies. I found myself wondering, I said, did Clark make the right decision? When you are stranded on a desert road, what should you do? Just like my bear tips, if it's brown, lay down. If it's black, fight back. That could have saved people since our review. So I'm going to try to help someone out there who might be listening on a road trip through Death Valley and their car breaks down. So I'm going to tell you right now, what you should do, stay put. Your number one priority is to find shelter from the sun. If there's no large trees or man-made structures nearby, climb under the car itself. If you have extra water or maybe some fluids from the car, you can splash your spare clothing and make them wrapped around your body to keep you cool. But stay with the vehicle. If you have road flares, use them. Otherwise, collect bushes, start a signal fire, maybe burn a spare tire. You get a lot of smoke. Somebody will find you. But generally, don't go off away from the car if you're hoping to be found. But if you do, leave a note, leave directions, and put the hood of your car up. That will signal aircraft in the area to notify that there is a person in distress. So if you're out there on the roads, have fun with your family. Don't hit on women in the hotel pool if they're nude, and stay safe on the roads in the desert.
Also, if you happen to find a remote desert mechanic that gets your car that you totally just fucked up by jumping it running again, they actually fixed your fucking car with whatever spare parts they had around and got you back on the road and only charged you $500, you shake that man's hand and you kiss his dick because he just did you a favor.
Seriously, and you write a Yelp review.
Well, the Griswolds discover Aunt Edna has died in her sleep. When they reach her son Norman's home in Phoenix, they discover he is out of town, so they leave Edna's body by the back door with a note. Ellen and the children want to go back home, but Clark has become obsessed with reaching Walley World. He eventually meets the Ferrari-driving blonde beauty at a hotel and goes skinny dipping with her in its pool, but they are discovered by the family before anything intimate happens. Ellen forgives Clark, and the couple goes skinny dipping themselves. So I gotta ask, who the fuck thought it was a good idea to make the face of your comedy franchise play a scene where he's cheating on his wife in front of his children and a whole motel full of people? Like, Clark at this point becomes irredeemable in my book. It's not funny, and this makes me hate him for the rest of the series. Any movie they make with National Lampoon and Vacation in the title featuring Chevy Chase, I'm gonna fucking hate him. And then Ellen just fucks him anyway. Like, have some self-respect, Ellen.
I don't get it. He definitely, in the beginning, Tom asked, would he have had sex? He did everything but. He crossed that line. He was in the bar trying to pick up other rando chicks. This is not the first time Clark has done it. And Rusty even calls him on that bullshit. He says, when he gives him the line about, it was a swim up waitress. He goes, you think mom's going to buy that? These kids know. They even ask, is this going to end up in a divorce? His infidelity and him cheating shocked me, and it is not a secret to the rest of the family.
He starts lying about his ring and his family and the car. I just kind of rolled my eyes because here's the deal. Okay, I get that people cheat. I get that people fall into situations that they become unfaithful. That's fine. But it's not fine, but you know what I mean? Like, it happens, right? But this is totally different because he seeks this out. And I think what it shows us here, which I think is really indicative of the 80s, which were so male-centric, is this whole idea of like, he's miserable actually being a family man. Like, that isn't what he likes. He's that poor guy who's lost his identity because he has a family and he's not the cool Lothario anymore. And I don't know. I think it could go one of two ways. Like, the way they play it, it's just gross. Maybe if they would have played up the juxtaposition of him like lying about wanting to be a family man and actually like being miserable about being one, could have been some sort of dark comedy that could have been interesting, and maybe we'd find like this bumbling relatable, but instead we're supposed to just like giggle at him being nervous when her tits come out, and we're supposed to be like, oh, Clark, you're such a bad boy. And it doesn't play that way for me. It just plays that he's gross.
And to anybody out there listening, because they're going to think, oh, social justice warriors, this is a movie from the 80s. Go back and watch, okay? Because I am far from social justice, okay? I could not believe that Clark was such a scumbag. I remember him as the family man. That's how they sell him throughout the series. Oh, I'll do everything for my family. I'll drive cross country. I'll take my whole holiday bonus and build a pool. Wrong. Clark is a dick. He is delusional. He is Walter White from Breaking Bad. Nothing is ever about his family. It is about him. And forget about the cheating, okay? He's constantly passive aggressive to Ellen. And Ellen rocks. She's hot, okay? He's going to constantly ask, hey, can I get oral sex in the front of my kids? You know, he doesn't remember his daughter's name. When Ellen says, I think Audrey's deaf, he goes, who cares? It's funny anyway. He kills Dinky the dog without an ounce of remorse. If you hurt an animal, that shows about your character. He then desecrates poor Aunt Edna's remains. He steals money from the hotel, and it's his own fault he lost the cards in his wallet, right? He's got mood swings. Gene, you said out before when he lashes out the family, I think you're all fucked in the head. The dude's got an issue, and then he's going to threaten those poor minimum wage Walley World security guys. I just can't get over how wrong we are about Clark. In every movie, Clark's a dirtbag. In part 2, when he thinks about getting the pool, is he thinking about his family? No, he's picturing that scene from Fast Times at Ridgemont High on the diving board. He's a dick.
I mean, in defense of Walter White, I think Walter White intended to help his family in the beginning. I don't think he's as bad as Clark Griswold, but I don't disagree with you about Clark. And it made me, I really did a lot of thinking about this because somebody like my dad, he likes to think of himself as like the Clark of our family. Like he always jokes like, oh, I'm like Clark Griswold. And like, he's completely opposite. I'm Clark Griswold. And it's not just my dad. There's all these men who became dads in the 80s that are wonderful family men, like really solid dudes that like to think of themselves like Clark. And I don't know if it's because in Christmas Vacation, he's goofier. Yeah, he's still a tool, but he isn't as much of a tool as he is here. Right. And the thing I felt the worst for was Ellen, because like she looks at him and she rolls her eyes and it's like, oh, silly Clark. And y'all, I'd be straight up booking a flight home for me and the kids and burning his shit on the front lawn. It made me really sad for her because she's such a badass woman, and it's just shitty that she got written that way.
As a devout lover of everything Breaking Bad, I got to call bullshit on that. In Felina, the series finale, he clearly states to Skyler, I did it for me. I did it for the way it made me feel. It wasn't about you.
5 seasons later, I'm talking about the beginning. But anyway, it's fine. We can, coming soon, Shot on Breaking Bad.
Oh, I wish we were around back then.
God, if only King B would be here in a heartbeat. I got to ask the question, like, are we all dumping Edna's body these days? I remember when I was younger, and even as recently as like 5 years ago, a funeral was a big deal. You put on your best black suit. Everybody would travel to a place. You'd have a big memorial service. There were flowers everywhere. And then you had a separate burial service. And then the family would go to some home somewhere and you'd be there for the rest of the day. Couple of hours with just the close family, and you go hug aunts whose names you don't really know and who smell kind of weird. Lately, I've been to a few funerals where the family clearly just wants to do the bare minimum and get it over with. No memorial for the burial, no ceremony. Like people just show up in their everyday clothes. I mean, the last funeral I went to, people showed up in their scrubs from the hospital or dentist's office. They say a few words about the dead, they drop her in and go. I even went to a Wednesday funeral this year because the family didn't want to cancel their weekend trip to California.
Well, I mean, could we try to start something here? Let's start a trend. I had recently read a story about someone who was ill, and they had recorded a goodbye message. And they said, when I die, just play it at my funeral. And it was humorous. It was lighthearted. It was like Peyton Manning's Hall of Fame speech. It was brief, 6 minutes to the point, and it encapsulated that person's life. I think the funeral should match who the person was and how they lived. If somebody's fun and relaxed, I don't want people to come all buttoned up. I want people to come out, shoot the shit, have a couple drinks, and tell funny stories. But the problem I have with this scene is that Clark steals that choice from Ellen. That's her family. Ellen should have made that call. Let's pull the plug on the trip. Leaving her in the backyard wrapped in a towel. She's going to be all pruned when her son comes home.
We got coyotes out here too.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of this has to do with like COVID, because in COVID, they started with drive-through funerals. That was the big thing here in Houston. I don't know if it was where you were, but Tom, I can't say who he works for, but he works for a very large funeral home conglomerate. And he and I have done a lot of talking since COVID began about the way that the funeral industry is changing and how there's going to be an everlasting change to that there were more cremations than ever before. So families that had never cremated somebody all of a sudden had somebody cremated, so they're more likely to cremate future relatives, right? And these drive-through funerals were so convenient because you didn't have to go in and get out and walk and see the creepy body that's all embalmed and looks kind of puffy, and so he thinks that it's going to be something that continues. So I don't know. I think when death is like all around us and the world like accepts that all these people are just going to die, I think it trickles down and affects the way we all feel about like every funeral, and it's just kind of a bummer.
I'm going to do a funeral Zoom call. Make it as easy. No, you don't inconvenience people. You could do a PowerPoint presentation.
I better have a big ass party when I die. Y'all better all come and dance and drink and get drunk and eat good food and tell really shitty stories about me.
I like that the youngest member of the pod and a woman is saying when she dies, we should be there. Oh, you're talking about the listeners. Like Big D and I are going to be long fucking gone.
Yeah, we're not going to be there. Fuck no. No chance.
Oh. Maybe we'll have like some sort of Shat like trifecta death, and then we'll all of a sudden become so popular in our death that our children will live off of the earnings from Shat forever.
They'll just do like Anthony Bourdain. It's just going to be AI making me and Big D's voices talk, even though we're dead.
Guys, I can promise you something. I will never record with your holograms.
I just hope there's no accident that takes the two of you out in New Orleans, because you two are in one place.
God, it would be such a good way to go, though.
We strategically separate throughout the country, so you can't take us out. Like one natural catastrophe can't kill 2/3 of Shat. But you two getting together, you're tempting fate. We know there's floods. Could be a hurricane.
You don't have to worry about a hurricane. I think you got to worry more about our blood alcohol levels getting out of control.
Different kind of hurricane, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The family finally arrives at Walley World, only to discover the park closed for the next 2 weeks for repairs. Clark buys a realistic-looking BB gun and demands that park security guard Russ Lasky take them through Walley World. Eventually, an LAPD SWAT team arrives, and just as the family is about to be arrested, the park owner, Roy Walley, appears. Roy decides not to file criminal charges against the Griswolds and lets the family, along with the SWAT team, enjoy the park as his guests. The final shot shows that the family flew back to Chicago with souvenir hats.
So I've shit on this movie a good bit, but I will admit that the gag of them running to Chariots of Fire I thought was really great. And finding the park closed, of course I expected it because I remembered the ending, but so many movies have parodied this or stolen this type of ending since then that I think it just really works well here. And unlike a lot of this movie, it's genuinely funny when they walk up and they have to listen to the pre-recorded, voice of the moose telling them why they're closed. It is such a better gag at the end than the bonus thing from Christmas Vacation where Cousin Eddie kidnaps the boss. This works great. Although I will say, and I call bullshit on how unrealistic it is that they would be able to ride these rides, because my first job was at Jazzland. Shout out to Six Flags New Orleans. And you needed multiple people to run the rides. Like it took like 4 people to get the roller coasters going. So they couldn't take John Candy on like this, but I am willing to let it go because it was good. I mean, this was actually a fun way I felt like to wrap up this movie.
And John Candy as Russ Lasky, I'm so glad he was there at the end to cheer me up, because I kind of had a sour taste in my mouth ever since the pool incident. And he was like the sugar cube of my absinthe.
Yeah, this end of the movie, actually, you mentioned the Christmas Vacation, the kidnapping. In the original Hughes script, that was how this movie ended. Clark gets all pissed off. The park's closed. They drive to Roy Walley's house. They kidnap him and the other executives and they hold him hostage. It's exactly what they did, basically with Cousin Eddie substituting in the sequel. But I'm glad here we get to see Walley World, because otherwise it would have sucked. And I found myself wanting to know more about the character. So I went and I actually got a still freeze frame of the entrance. Have you ever stopped to look at the other characters that inhabit the world of Marty Moose? Okay, so we have a pink bell-bottomed wearing moose who's rocking a blue guitar. We then have the hipster moose who's in a yellow tank top skateboarding. There's an overweight bear in green overalls. There's a NASCAR moose. There's some golden bird thing. And there's a military fox with spy glasses. I want to know more about these characters.
Is that a brown bear or a black bear?
It's brown, so lay down. Oh, okay, so nobody else is interested in the other characters. I guess I'm all alone here.
What? You want me to ask individually about them?
No.
I asked about the fucking bear.
Okay. No.
That's really interesting.
Oh, shut up.
Do you think they all live in the forest or have their own houses?
Shut up. All loyal.
Which one's the leader? Are they related?
You guys are mean.
If you could be any of those characters, which one would you be and why?
God, I hate you.
Was the fox enlisted or an officer?
I hate you. He looks enlisted because he's actually like doing some work. But there is one thing that this movie does at the end that I really enjoyed. I want to talk about the end credits. So many times we've commented that movies seem to use this as a way to remind the audience what they had just watched, so they leave the theater with a positive image, like Spies Like Us. Oh, this was a great, funny movie. This is the way that you do it. That end sequence of family photos throughout the trip seems natural. It seems authentic. It's all done from the set. It captures what a real family trip is like. The disdain for each member of the family. It was so good. I watched this all the way to the end. I haven't seen anything this compelling since the end of The Hangover, where you finally get the reveal of what was on the photos. It was so good. And if they'd only gotten that tone through the whole movie, this movie would be legendary.
I mean, yeah, it's no Red Dawn, but I was really looking for some heroic pictures of the family holding rifles and stuff.
Mm-hmm. With some patriotic music.
In better times, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if only the commies had built Wally World and we had taken it back. Wolverines!
Well, now is the time we give our Shat scores for National Lampoon's Vacation. The wipe scores are our way of telling you how many wipes a movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is Beverly D'Angelo's surprise boobs or Christy Brinkley's skinny dipping. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's Cousin Eddie offering you a beer, but giving you the one he was already drinking out of. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for National Lampoon's Vacation?
So this movie tries. It does. And I do think it's important because, like, I think you said at the beginning, Gene, that it's important because it influenced so many things that kind of came after it, the R-rated comedy. But it doesn't always succeed in the ways that it tries. And I think that a lot of the jokes are forced. I stand by the fact that Chevy Chase still remains the most unfunny dude that's famous for being funny but isn't actually funny of all time. And Clark is a really shitty character. I feel badly for his wife and kids. And I don't understand how this movie spawned the franchise that it did, because it was a little bit worse than average. And so for me, that's 2.75 wipes.
I'm going to come in a little more generously than that. I gave Christmas Vacation 4 wipes. That was a terrible movie. It was all the same bullshit as Vacation, but at least Vacation took some chances with some edgy topics. I mean, they touched on porn, weed, masturbation, poverty, sexuality, holding theme park security at gunpoint. The sequel, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, was just ladder jokes and more pumping up Clark. This isn't a good movie, but it's certainly not complete trash. I did genuinely laugh a few times, which I didn't expect to do. So better than I expected, but I'm going to call it just flat average at 2.5 wipes.
Okay, so to offer our listeners a little behind the scenes, normally when I come into a review, I come out with a baseline score, something I think, but then I'm flexible throughout the recording. I will go up or down depending on, it's all about discussing a movie with friends. So I came into this thinking this is a 1.75 movie. I'm going to go with a 2 wipe. Okay. It is better than average, but your memories of this movie are of the good few vignettes. It is Cousin Eddie. It is even like the campground. There's a lot of little parts that work, but a lot of the movie doesn't work. And Clark, he's a bad dude. I don't know why we loved him and thought he was the fun family guy. But overall, I still found myself laughing. But at the same time, I just hate Chevy Chase. I hate him. He's not the best part of this movie. So if we could reduce the Chevy factor, it might get down to a 1.75. It was an enjoyable hour and a half, but it is not as good as we remember. This is a 2 wipe movie.
All right, so that's 2 wipes from Big D, 2.5 wipes from me, and 2.75 wipes from Ash, giving us an average wipe score of 2.416 repeating wipes for National Lampoon's Vacation.
So Jane, with a score of 2.41 repeating wipes, that now ties this in the 126 spot with Halloween and Army of Darkness. They are slightly better than Empire Records and Back to the Beach, slightly worse than The Great Outdoors, Species, and Young Guns.
And Tom, I know this movie has a lot of personal value to you, and you called in and even gave some details on thinking of your family and your loved ones looking down on you from heaven. Those memories that you have with them, those laughs that you had with them, like hold on to those for sure.
Oh, for sure.
That still counts, right? That doesn't matter. I mean, there are movies that I watched with my family. I still remember being on the couch or being in the theater with my cousin and my mom, laughing our asses off, that I go back now and I go, yeah, this movie's a little problematic. But at the time, it was the funniest thing in the world to me. And more importantly, it was as a kid, when you see your mom who's, been working hard or, an uncle who you've never seen crack a smile laughing, that's a huge deal. And those are memories you should hold on to.
Yeah. And people think often we're too harsh on these, that we view them in the light of 2020 and 2021. We're not. We're just saying that as you grow, you change. You still find some things funny, but you also focus on things you missed as a kid. So go back and watch them and enjoy the experience, but don't think we're unnecessarily cruel.
Boobs.
Mm-hmm.
Big D, as we previewed on the last episode, we got a voicemail this week.
We do. So Gene, this week, one of our listeners from North Carolina, Landon, called in about The Fugitive.
Hi, Shat Crew. It's Landon from North Carolina. Been a fan of the show. I think it was your second episode that I caught on, and I've just been there ever since. Love it. Love you guys. And I just want to say, I just finished listening to the Fugitive podcast, and I can't believe that I wasn't the one to commission this. I don't know why it slipped my mind. But so I'm going to go through some stuff real quick. During the podcast, I was actually listening and doing some Google mapping and researching. So this whole, most of the action set pieces for the dam and the tunnel and the train were all filmed in Western North Carolina. As a matter of fact, 8-year-old me was at the dam the day that they did the shot where they had, where they tossed the dummy. It was a dummy that they kind of tossed off the dam. There were helicopters and stuff. This was filmed right outside my hometown, in Graham County, and we've got 3 pretty big dams in that area. So they had some to choose from, and they went with that one. And it was pretty cool. I remember seeing all the production rigs and trucks and stuff all around, and they had helicopters going. I can't remember if they threw the dummy off of the helicopter or off of the dam for the shot. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But that was crazy. And years later, when I would go to college, at Western North Carolina University, that's where they filmed the train shot. I have been to that wreckage site, that they left there. They've got the train and the bus there. They've got Illinois Division of Corrections and Illinois Railway or whatever it was. All that stuff's still on it, faded, but it's still there. So dam scene and the tunnel were total movie magic and editing. There's not really a pipe that runs to the center of the dam there where they have the confrontation, the whole I don't care, and then he jumps. That's not there. That was probably on set. The tunnel is actually in Bryson City, North Carolina, and it's a tunnel that goes to an abandoned stretch of highway that was never completed, that was supposed to go around to another dam. But where you see the dam off, I think to the right in the shot, and you see the tunnel to the left, that was total editing and green screen or whatever. Yeah, this was just wild. And I just can't believe that I was the one that did not commission this.
I want to know if Landon, as a kid, did they play down by the train tracks? Did you play The Fugitive? Okay, I'm Kimball. I'm going to throw you to safety. Oh, undo my handcuffs.
I should have given The Fugitive a better score because all that shit looked real to me. I mean, not the dummy, but the rest of it all looked I thought it was a real fucking dam that they just shot from a helicopter or something like that. And I thought that the tunnel was really there. So kudos to the effects team for that. But also, if you could see Big D's face while he was listening to this voicemail, I think you tapped into the documentary pleasure center of his brain where he was like, oh, this is fascinating. And Landon, if you don't have another thing going on career-wise, dude, consider doing Fugitive tours of North Carolina.
Yes.
I don't know about y'all, and Gene is going to roll his eyes when I say this, but that voicemail made me really miss Shat on TV, because that type of in-depth research that our listeners do, it makes me miss our mailbags and roll calls and the Telegraph, the burning bag of dog shit responses on Lovecraft Country,
Whoa.
whatever it was that we worked with. Like, people just took these times and wrote these beautiful dissertations in, and I think this means it might be time for a new show, guys.
Well, I'm laying down the gauntlet. Maybe it's because I drank half a bottle of Green Opigio right now, but I am going to do The Last of Us, HBO. It is I think they have the highest budget per episode of any television series ever. I'm doing it. Whoever's in.
You're doing it by yourself, or?
I don't get King B. I'll bring him out. I don't know. I'm doing it. Listeners, submit your tapes.
We should have done the White Lotus.
I'm taking auditions.
He's going to bring on special guest Italian podcaster Grino Pigio. Help him out with the podcast.
Well, Gene, next week, we are doing another fantastic summer movie. After graduating from high school, art school hopeful Hoops McCann struggles to complete his application to the Rhode Island School of Design. Resigning himself to a summer of boredom, McCann agrees to go along with his best friend, George, on a family trip to Nantucket, Massachusetts. But after McCann and Calamari meet rocker in distress, Cassandra, it suddenly looks like it's going to be one crazy summer. This was commissioned by Scott H., released in '86, and we can never have enough John Cusack movies.
Well, thank you, Scott, for that commission. And thank you, Tom, for this commission. And everyone who chipped in to make this possible. I think it is a cornerstone film that needed to be in the Shat library. So we're glad we can make it for you. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com, or leave us a voicemail like Landon did at 914-719-SHAT. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, completing a free anonymous survey to help attract advertisers, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. And you can check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, Watchmen, and apparently The Last of Us.
Yes.
You can find all that information on our website, shatontv.com, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Not really. I just want them to come running in from the lobby thinking that they missed something. Hi, I'm Ed Stewart, movie star, also known as Bobcat Goldthwait, and me and my friends John Cusack and Demi Moore.
I hate boats. I'm not getting on any boat. I beg to differ.
Just had one crazy summer.
Your dad said you were collecting shells. Shells? 57 millimeter.
We did all the normal things people do. Hey, little boy, will you hold on to this for me? Made friends. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Saw the sights.
Please, your enormous is anything but chilly.
Killed our own food. Dazzled women.
Are you ready for me, Hoops?
We were party animals. Help me. Everyone loved us.
My car.
And we loved every minute. By the end of the summer, I felt I'd grown a lot personally. I felt a little bit better about who I was and where I was going. Okay, let's move it out. Here we go. Wave. It really was one crazy summer.